Building an indie business in the center of venture capital. I am Alex Edmonds. People on the internet call me Supreme Rumham, and this is the Building an Indie Business podcast, recorded in the Indie Business Studio. Okay, so today I'm just talking about my job hunt, and specifically the fact that it's over, right? So I got a job in paid media, which is really funny because, for the entire, lockdown pandemic, since March 2020, I have been focusing on SEO, and paid media is the exact opposite of SEO. So yeah, that's my job. By the time I'm recording this at the end of April, so I'll be starting in a week. And by the time you hear this, it'll probably be like June or July. So I'll be into it. So I'm just going to talk about my entire job hunt from September 2021 to April 2022. So yeah, there's one notable thing that happened every month, so I'm just going to talk about that. Okay. So, before this, I was working, at, a feed store in Florida. And what I was doing was I was building them a new website so that they can do e-commerce, right? So I was building it on WordPress with WooCommerce, and I was just doing that on my own. I had no oversight. It was fantastic. And then that ended in August of 2021. August, September. August, September, let's just say that. And I didn't need to interview for that one. I didn't need a resume. And my biggest problem with job hunting before that was my resume was shit. And I knew this, and I couldn't figure out how to write a resume. Right. So I hired someone. I hired Crystal Parker. She's fantastic. She not only wrote my resume, the resume, if you've looked at my Twitter, before I got the paid media job, my resume was the one she wrote in a pinned tweet, right? So if you are having trouble with your job hunt, you need help with your resume, or you just need practice interviews, talk to Crystal, hire her. She's fantastic. She's great. There's also a Discord server that she has where you can talk to her different clients and interact with them and get interview advice, and it's just great support. So I was in New York for August of 2021, and I came back. And I had the idea to hire a resume writer. And so I was complaining about my resume, I guess, on Twitter, and Crystal saw that. She DM'd me and she was like, "Hey, we should work together." And I was like, yeah, great idea. And especially because I saw the resume writing as an investment. I pay, $100, $200, and 2-3 months later, I'm making $5,000 a month. That's probably the greatest investment you can make, right? When you compare it to the stock market or even crypto. Not crypto, but yeah. Actually, based on the monthly return, probably better than crypto in terms of percentages, but that's not the point of this episode. So yeah, Crystal wrote my resume. I started applying to jobs, and in October of 2021, I had my first interview, and that was with a company in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I'm in San Jose. This one was in San Francisco, and it was my first one. It was with the startup, and I remember I felt really awkward, and I was sweating, and I didn't know what to say. And now that I realize, he asked me weird questions. So I had a job in big tech in 2020. That was my first job out of college, right? So he asked me like, "Oh, why do you want to go from big tech to startups? Like that is uncommon, and that's like a unicorn event." It's not. It's super common. My father came to the Bay Area in '97 to work at a startup. And then he also worked at the same big tech company for 20 years, like 3 years later of working for startups. So this one was 97 that he came to live here. And no, like 95, whatever. So from like 95 to 98, 99, he was working at startups, and then he made the transition to big tech. And so I kind of felt awkward with those questions. And he asked me like that question in different ways, like 3 different times. So of course I didn't get that job, right? So that was September, right? And then October hit. In October, I'm applying to jobs, I'm interviewing, and then I start talking to this one education company. And for a lot of October, I was in Texas visiting family. And so I had the first interview and I was in San Jose. And then the second part of this interviewing process was a it was like a take-home assignment. And this take-home assignment pissed me off so much because they wanted to see if I knew marketing strategy, right? And so they had me write out how I would promote their products. And then, so I wrote like 6 or 7 pages, and it was great. It was perfect. It's exactly what they wanted. And then the guy who interviewed me first emailed me. He goes, "Oh, we wanted to see like a worked out example." So I talked about email, I talked about blog writing, and so he wanted to see like what an email that I would write would say, what a blog post I would write would say, which was bullshit, right? So I wrote the 6 pages, and then so that was like October 5th or 6th, right? And October 7th or something like that, he emails me again, and he's like, "Hey, we wanted to see the worked example." And so I submitted it while I was home, and then he emailed me while I was in Texas. So, I had already gone out of that mindset of, I'm done with this. I'm going to prepare for the third interview. And so I had to get back in that mindset. And then when I was in Texas, I had the third interview. That was like maybe like the 14th. And then I left in the 20s, right? So, this guy, I was interviewing with a different guy. And he was like, "Yeah, I didn't read your second submission." So it was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I put a lot of effort into that. And the first guy told me that it would affect my standing in the later interviews. And so that was bullshit. And that interview went whatever. And then I get back home, and this is like the late 20s, 30, almost Halloween. And they go, we can't give you the support that you need to be successful in this role. And it's like, then why bother even talking to me? You knew that before you started talking to me. Yeah, so fuck that company. Yeah, so then that was October. November. For November, I wrote for Trans VC. Yeah, so the play to earn report, I wrote like a very small fraction of that, like maybe not even 5%, but some of what I wrote is in there, right? So that was cool. But I was interviewing for like a full-time position, and Drew decided to go in a different direction. but that's okay. And then I started to talk to this company in New York, and they were like a finance company, and that fit well because it was a content role, and of course I have revenue research, so I talked about that a lot, and yeah, so I noticed that the employees were very pale, right? And the manager that I would have had was very much, she looked like me, right? And so I was pretty excited about that. But I looked at the company picture at one of their like retreats or whatever, and I could easily spot her. So, I had that going against me for that one, but then like her and I had this energy together and it was great. But she wanted me to go to the office and like be in person. So we did the first interview and that went great. We did the second interview, that went great. And actually, side note, when I was in New York in August, I passed their offices. She gave me the address and I plugged it in and I was like, yeah, I know exactly where this is because I was down there. So it was by like Port Authority, and I had taken Port Authority to go back to where I was staying. So I knew exactly like how to get there from where I was staying because I was staying with family. Yeah. So, and then the third interview, which I like this. She basically gave me an assignment that is what I would do in a day. So it was just like 2 pages, write a blog post, write a blog post or write a summary strategy that you would give a client. So I basically just wrote email's great, SEO's great, and here's why. And she gave me a clock. So it was like, write this in 48 hours because this is what you would do at work. Yeah. So after that, I was kind of like picturing myself living in New York. Like, yeah, I would stay with family. I'd take the subway here. I'd get food here. I'd have to spend this much money in a month on food, and I have to stick to that budget. And I'd go to comedy clubs after work. I'd take my manager to comedy clubs because she was from like Atlanta, right? And so I was giving her directions to my favorite pizza place from basically I was telling her how I get to my family's apartment because that's where the pizza place is. Right. So I just was picturing myself living in New York, what would I take from home to New York with me? Yeah. And then after I submitted it, she didn't get back to me as quickly because the first 2 interviews were maybe 2 days apart. Right. So yeah, I didn't get that job. And then I saw on LinkedIn, she just left the company and she was only there for 4 or 5 months. So something weird happened there. And I feel because we're connected on LinkedIn because we connected so well. She was like, hey, add me on LinkedIn and watch out for future opportunities. So I just saw she left the company for a Shopify plugin. So I kind of want to message her and be like, hey, what happened? But, now it doesn't matter because the reason why I wanted to message her is to see if there were any opportunities at her new company, especially because now I have Shopify experience. So that would help me, right? Yeah, so that was November, December. And then that was December, January, early, yeah. And then in December as well, I was interviewing. I started to focus on SEO. So I was applying for marketing associate, marketing analyst, marketing specialist. And then I started to see some results during this time. for like SEO. So for arrow drawings, I was working on that, seeing results. For the Open Podcast blog, I was seeing more traffic come in through SEO, especially because I stopped promoting it. So yeah, I started to focus not just marketing associate, but like SEO associate, marketing or SEO specialist. And that really helped me focus because I'm niching down, and especially because I was talking to different companies and they were like, yeah, people your age don't focus on SEO. They know social media and, Snapchat, Instagram. And I don't know any of that, but I know email and I know SEO. So I leaned into that. So, and I started getting more responses once I started applying to like SEO positions. And so I started applying to agencies, like marketing agencies for their SEO positions. And that's where I came in contact with this marketing agency that wanted me for an SEO position, right? And the last thing I did before the holiday break was interview at this one agency, right? And I hit it off with the person that was going to be my manager. We even talked about comedy. So I started telling her about, like, she was in Boston. And I was like, yeah, a lot of my favorite comics come from Boston. And so I started to talk about Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neal, and a bunch of other guys. And she was like, yeah, I don't really know anything about comedy, but I've been to some shows. And because she asked me, like, oh, what do you do, like, in your free time? And I was like, yeah, I watch a lot of comedy. And that really, like, you could see my personality come out when I started talking about that. And that really changed the tone of the interview. I stopped being nervous, and that helped me to, connect with her. And then, so that was the last thing I did. And then in January, I met with like 2 other managers, and that one was really awkward. I don't know why. They were asking me questions, and I knew I stumbled on the answer. Like, I knew them, but I had to think about it, right? So that didn't help. Yeah, and then January, what's another thing that happened? Oh yeah, in November and December, like, a lot of companies would be like, we'll get back to you next year, right? And like I was talking to this one woman who had a small business, and I think she was starting an agency, and I talked to her in December. She wanted the position I was that I was interviewing for was like marketing assistant. Like, I would help her do marketing. So she ran the agency, and anytime a client like wanted writing, I'd do the writing. And then she also wanted to keep me on for like her personal use. So like, she had what do you call it? Like a WordPress website, and she wanted me to do the WordPress website for her. So she was like, yeah, let me talk to you in the new year where I have 5 clients coming in. And I was like, okay. She never got back to me. Like, we would email back and forth a little bit in January. And then at the end of January, I was like, hey, what's going on? Because she emailed me. She was like, yeah, my whole family has COVID. And so, like, end of January, beginning of February, I was like, hey, just checking in on you. Because I'm Bill Burr. Checking in on you! Sorry. Yeah, and she never got back to me. That was unfortunate, but I made the mistake of so one problem I had during all these job interviews and negotiations is, once you have more experience, you can charge more. And I didn't take that into consideration. So I was making a certain amount of money at doing the WordPress stuff at the feed store, and I just kept that rate. So I told them exactly what I was making at the store, instead of being like, yeah, I have, a year or 2 of experience of WordPress experience, maybe $10 more an hour, maybe 20. So yeah, that would have been like a low paying side gig. And then she was telling me that her husband started an e-commerce store and that I could help him. And of course I could, because I told her about arrow drawings, right? But it was a WooCommerce store. So everything was WordPress, which for someone building WordPress themes, I don't like. But that's a whole nother episode. Yeah, but they never got back to me. I even like sent her like a concerned email, was like, hey, are you good? And I never heard back. But and she's not active. She was active on LinkedIn, and now I don't see any of her activity. So yeah, that was another one. And then yeah, that was January. Nothing really significant besides those three happened. February, they started to die down. Yeah. And then in March, I found like the perfect job, right? So I found a job that was an SEO e-commerce manager. So basically, what I do for arrow drawings, I do So it was SEO e-commerce account manager. So the SEO portion of what I do for arrow drawings, product descriptions, technical audits. But I was the manager. Or I would have been. So I hire people to do that stuff for me, and then I just manage them. And I'm doing this for like 15 to 20 accounts, right? So that fell through because I almost got scammed, right? So at this time, I was fielding this company, and I was fielding another company, and I was really excited for this SEO account manager position because I met with the CEO, and she literally said, I like you, but I need my other guy to meet with you. And so I emailed her on Thursday wanting to schedule the follow-up. She didn't get back to me at all. So this other company that never existed, they had interviewed me before this, and the interview was really weird, and this should have been a red flag. It was on Skype, and it was text only. So I had a document of like commonly asked questions, and I would copy and paste these answers, and they gave me everything I asked for, right? No problem. And then, so on Monday they sent me an offer letter, and the offer letter turned out to be, or the offer, with like benefits, bonus, and overtime turned out to be like 80,000. And I was like, fuck yeah, I should just take that one, because I know the SEO company wasn't going to match it, right? Because they put the range, and the range was 55 to 70, right? So they weren't going to offer me 80. So on Tuesday, she finally got back to me. So on Monday, when I got the offer, I had reached out to her. I sent her an email, and I was like, hey, I got an offer, but I want to work for you. Can you schedule something with me? I have until Friday to decide. And so I took like 2 to 3 days. I told the other company, like, I need the time to decide. And so I emailed her on Monday, and I sent her a message on LinkedIn, because that's how we first connected. And she got back to me on Wednesday. And by that time, I saw that it was $80,000. And I was like, I took the other offer. Sorry. Yeah. So I did that. And then this other company sent me a check, and they were like, can you deposit this online only? And they sent me an invoice. So they were like, okay, you need to pay the invoice. Right. And then, I sent like LinkedIn requests to the people that I was talking to. And it was a spoofing scam. So they were using all of the right information, but it was getting redirected to them, not the real company, right? So I kind of noticed that, and I didn't cash the check, so I didn't get scammed. But I already told this other company, my quote unquote dream job, that I took the offer. And so as a long shot, I emailed her again, and I was like, hey, I got scammed. Can we still meet and see if I'm a right fit for the job? And of course, she didn't get back to me. It was a long shot. I had nothing to lose. So yeah, that was March. And then on March, like 28th, yeah, like 26th to 28th, this company that that I accepted the job for, I had my first interview, and I was interviewing for like a digital marketing assistant job, and I'm meeting with the HR person, and I'm telling her about all my technical stuff. I'm telling her like, yeah, I'm building WordPress themes to start a Shopify store. I have a blog. I optimize it for SEO. I have a lot of experience with email. And she stops. And we're hanging out. We're talking about like the environment and how I hate packaging, and things like that. Like, we're just hanging out, and I'm talking about my job in big tech and how there's a lot of bureaucracy. And we're just laughing. We're hanging out. We're talking. And she stops for a minute, and she goes, there's a job that I haven't posted that you would be perfect for. And it was the paid media gig, right? And it's more money. You have an opportunity for a lot of commission. And she didn't really tell me what the job was. She said it was like ads, but it's kind of like the stock market, right? Like day trading. And I have my background in finance. I really like investing, so I kind of have a grip on that stuff. Like it'd be an easy transition from what she described from SEO, right? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? More money. And the worst case scenarios, the paid media people say no, and I take the marketing assistant job, right? So I'm still working at the company with the benefits, and that was the important part, right? So then, yeah. The next week, I interviewed with the manager. Him and I hit it off. I'm talking about arrow drawings, talking about web development, because I looked him up on LinkedIn, and he had a background in web development. He struck out on his own in web development. So we started talking about that. And then the next day, so that was Monday. Tuesday, I met with like the lead of my team. That would be the guy who's now the lead of my team. We hit it off. We started talking about New York, started talking about pizza, things like that. My ethnicity, because he knew about the places where my parents are from. Yeah, and then the third interview was with someone who's at the same level, but they've been there for like 9 months, right? So him and I hit it off too. I never had a bad conversation, so I really loved it, right? Yeah, and then I met with the chief officer, one of the chief officers, like the chief officer of my department. And we never even talked about like my qualifications. We talked about open podcasts a lot, right? We talked about my writing. He was very curious about how I got started in web development from like my marketing background. And so I'm talking about open podcasts. Like, yeah, I started this Telegram group. I wanted to create our own space and use it to build a product. And then I started talking about like way back, like alerts for btc.com, right? Yeah. And then I started talking about what I'm doing now, and he thought that was very interesting. And I think that's because they want me for something else. Like, there's my job now, and they're gonna start adding more stuff, like more products or product offerings, and they're gonna tap me on the shoulder and be like, "Hey, can you work on this?" Yeah, I'm not done yet though. So during this time, I'm interviewing. I'm still interviewing, right? Like, I have more to say about March. Um, so yeah, I have friends helping me out get jobs, right? And so in January, like November, January, uh, I'm interviewing with this one company as an SEO specialist that someone set up for me. And they, like, I was interviewing November, December, and they told me, like, yeah, in the new year, we'll figure out, because we need to figure out budgeting for your position, and you'll come in part-time, and then eventually, if we like your work, full-time. And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, because that's what I want. Because I want an SEO position that will teach me, like, SEO. Like, so right now, I can get, like, 200-300 views a day. I want, like, 1,000 views a day, right? So by working in the industry, I'll figure that out. That's what I want. So for that company, I emailed with the CEO. He was fine with me. He was like, you have your basics in SEO. I'll take you to the next level. Then I met with someone else about email, and they were like, yeah, we want 20% open rate. And for arrow joints, I get like 25 to 30. So I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And then I meet with the head of HR, and she was like, yeah, do you have access to Slack? Do you have access to an email? So she was talking to me like I had already been hired, right? But then suddenly they stopped talking to me. And this is like the same time that woman and her husband stopped talking to me. So then, yeah, that was January. And then this same friend, you know him, but I won't name him. I told him this, and he was pissed off. So he has another business partner, and they were looking for someone to be in a marketing position, like a marketing manager. So the SEO job that I was looking for, but it's every part of marketing. So it's email, it's paid media, it's SEO, it's email. Did I say email twice? Whatever. You understand me. The problem with this one is it's half of what I'm making in this role that I have, no benefits. And benefits are important to me, right? So as I'm he told me he was going to get me an offer, like the week that the week before I started interviewing, like, everyone, or being interviewed by everyone at the company that I'm working for now. He said he was going to get an offer for me. And yeah, I didn't want to tell him that I was looking for, like, I might get another offer until I had a firm one. Or, like, I didn't want to reject his offer until I had one, right? And so, yeah, something happened, and so he told me that, like, Friday, right, that he was going to send me the offer on, like, Monday, and I was going to start on April 18th, right? And so something happened, and he didn't get back to me. And I didn't push it because I'm trying to get the offer from the other company. And so I'm scheduling the interviews back to back to back to back. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm getting these interviews out of the way. Just, like, getting pumped up, you know, bringing energy, making sure I hit it off with anyone. And then, yeah, they get me the offer on Thursday. I have the interviews in the morning, and, like, by late Thursday afternoon, I have the offer. I'm good. I'm like, let's go. And then he calls me like Friday. He's like, hey, sorry for the delay. Whatever. And I was like, dude, like I'm still shaking from the scam. So I don't want to tell him no until I have a firm knowledge of this, that this company's real. But he calls me on Friday, and the offer letter was very detailed versus the other one. The other one just said, like, this is your salary, you get a bonus, you have insurance. And this offer, it was like, there was a signing of the CEO's name. It was on like company letterhead. It was way more detailed, right? So I'm like, okay, this is real. Let me tell him, because I don't want to screw him, right? He's a friend of a friend. I've interacted with him on Twitter, right? So yeah, I tell him, like, dude, I got this other offer. You can't beat it. So you're going to need to find someone else, right? And then also, during that week, the week before I started interviewing, I got a part-time role as an SEO coordinator, right? So this company's in like North Carolina. It's like a little above minimum wage part-time. So I'm thinking, yeah, I can do this job in the marketing manager role, right? So they call me, they offer me the job on Monday, and they tell me they need references. I completely forget this, because if you tell me something, I'm going to forget it. I need it in writing. So they call me on Friday while I'm talking to someone. I'm talking to someone for the paid media job, right? So I don't answer the phone. I don't call them back, right? Because as soon as he calls me back, or as soon as he calls me, I go, shit, I forgot the references. So I'm like, okay, let me just not do this. And then I send them the email with the references on Monday. No, that was the Monday when I was interviewing. So I send the references on Monday. Like, they tell me I have the job, right? No offer letter yet, though. And then that's when I started interviewing. So I'm confident in this role, and then I'm interviewing I have this job, right? But I'm still trying to get another job, right? So they never got back to me, which that works out, right? Because, both those two roles together still don't equal the amount of money I'm making in this role that I have, right? So it worked out, right? Okay. Some stats. So I applied to over 1,200 jobs on LinkedIn, Indeed, some other websites, ZipRecruiter. I had over 80 interviews. This took about 6 months. Over 80 that I can track, because there are phone calls. If it wasn't in my calendar, I didn't count it, right? But there were like random interview calls. So like 80 interviews, 1,200 applications, 6 months, but it all led to a role in paid media. So yeah, that was great. I'm still gonna work on SEO, of course, because I have smashing themes. But my manager told me that I can still work on arrow drawings. So I'm excited for this role. And of course, since I talk about on this podcast what I'm working on, if there's anything that, it's not proprietary, I will talk about. I can talk about what I'm learning. So now this podcast goes from SEO WordPress domains to SEO WordPress domains and paid media. So yeah, this is a super long episode. If you made it through this far, tweet me, email me, let me know. Say, hey, I finished the episode, or like just 2 words, paid media, right? Tweet me those, email me those. I would like to know. I appreciate it. because that means you're a hardcore fan. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye.